Welcome back to the IBFP. Here's your host, Boxing New.
Welcome back, fight fans. Welcome back. Let's just dig right into it. Anthony Joshua, Canelo Alvarez, these guys are simply a different breed, and they live up to a different standard. They're the best fighters in boxing, hands down, and we just have to break it down honestly and objectively. And you start with Canelo Alvarez and you look at his competition. He's fighting the best fighters of his division, and a Gennady Golovkin and a Danny Jacobs. Both were world champions. Gennady was unified world champion. These were undoubtedly the two most proven, the two best middleweights in the division, and Canelo Alvarez went in and beat both of these guys. Then he moves up and faces a guy like Sergey Kovalev, a guy who has a height advantage, a reach advantage, a power advantage, experience advantage, and who was a sitting world champion coming off of 2 victories. Canelo Alvarez is consistently fighting the best after the best after the best. He's taken on world champion after world champion, fight after fight after fight. No other fighter is consistently doing that. And then you turn around and you see Anthony Joshua. He has the who's who of the heavyweight division on his resume. He has some of the best fighters in the division. He has Dillian White, Andy Ruiz Jr., Vladimir Klitschko, Joseph Parker. So you see with this entire resume, you see his body of work is consistent with constantly fighting the best fighters. You see Canelo and Anthony Joshua aren't taking the easy fight. They aren't taking guys moving up in weight, coming off a loss. They're facing world champions. They're facing guys who have proven to be some of the best fighters in the division. They're not taking the easy fights, and that's why these guys are simply a different breed. And let me give you a prime example. When you look in the middleweight division, you see a Jamal Charlo who's a world champion, but yet he's taking a guy moving up in weight, coming off a loss as his next fight. And you know what? And when he took that fight at that time, it didn't make sense, because you had the opportunity to fight a guy like Demetrius Andre. He had the opportunity to fight a guy like Danny Jacobs, but yet you'd rather have a guy moving up in weight, coming off a loss. If Canelo Alvarez would have done that, then he would have been criticized. Canelo Alvarez is being criticized for fighting a sitting world champion who's undefeated. There's a double standard simply because this guy Canelo Alvarez is a different breed. And then you look at Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua is simply fighting the best in his division. And you look at a guy like Luis King Kong Ortiz. And Luis King Kong Ortiz is a guy that Deontay Wilder fight. And in a fight that made 0 sense. In a fight that no one asked for, that no one cared about. Luis Ortiz has never been a world champion. He has no elite level, top level wins. He's not an elite level power puncher. He's a good technical boxer, but he's not special in that regard. And then you also see how old Luis King Kong Ortiz is. The problem with this situation is, for Deontay Wilder, that was a cherry pick fight. That was a fight of an old fighter who had already been knocked out, who's never been a world champion. It was an absolute cherry pick. And a lot of people are going to wonder, well, didn't Anthony Joshua make him an offer earlier that year? Yes, Anthony Joshua did make him an offer. And this is why. Simply because Jarrell Miller pulled out of the fight, basically because he was taking more juice and more steroids than any fighter in the history of boxing before the Anthony Joshua fight, and disqualified himself. Anthony Joshua simply only offered Luis Ortiz a fight as a replacement. You have to understand, Anthony Joshua's late replacement fights are better than Deontay Wilder's scheduled fights. Let's be honest and unbiased. And then you turn around and you see, a local fanboy, Andre Wright, come out and states Canelo wants Billy Joe Saunders because he's a credible name, a good boxer with not enough power to be a real threat. And so basically calling it a cherry pick, when he himself admitted that he's a credible name and a good boxer, but he tried to say that he doesn't have enough power. You have to understand, power doesn't mean as much. You see Floyd Mayweather Jr., one of the greatest of all time, won a lot of fights and didn't need power to do it. But you also see that you're trying to say and imply that Canelo don't take risks and he doesn't take guys based off of, power and things like that. When he legitimately fought the hardest puncher in the division, Gennady Golovkin, twice. He fought the guy twice. This was the guy that most people thought had the best chance of knocking out Canelo Alvarez. So he's already fought the best in the division, the hardest hitting and the strongest puncher. What are we talking about here? And everyone says that it'll be a cherry pick if he fights a guy like Triple G again, instead of fighting a more skillful fighter, which Billy Joe Saunders is. Fanboys say the dumbest things. And then you look at a guy like Anthony Joshua. And you know, Anthony Joshua is a special fighter. He's a different breed. And this is why. Because you see, you know, a local fanboy, Michael Thomas, comes out and states, AJ is scared to go back to America, you clown. So he wants to call us a clown and say Anthony Joshua is scared to go back to America. Well, you see, the first time Anthony Joshua offered in negotiations with Deontay Wilder a fight, one fight in the UK and one fight in the US. And yet Deontay Wilder turned the offer down. Then Anthony Joshua came to the U.S., fought Andy Ruiz Jr., lost his belt, fought the guy in Saudi Arabia, and dominated Andy Ruiz Jr. Why would he be scared to come back to the U.S.? Why would he be scared when he's already beat the guy that beat him? He's already beat the guy that people said that he would never fight again. This fight wasn't close. It was an absolute shutout where Anthony Joshua literally won every single round. Deontay Wilder lost 7 straight rounds against Luis King Kong Ortiz. And yet again, Anthony Joshua called out Deontay Wilder and insisted on a unification fight immediately after fighting Andy Ruiz Jr. Why would he be scared to come to America? You clown. But once again, unbiased as always, it's the IBFP.